This is a Music Therapy Chronicles podcast episode with Melanie Wiseheart.
The definition that I used in my research, my operational definition of reflective practice was the purposeful examination of thoughts, emotions, actions, beliefs, values, assumptions, therapeutic issues, and events that are relevant to music therapy clinical practice.
You're listening to the Music Therapy Chronicles, a podcast about music therapy from a variety of perspectives. Our ambition is to inspire and connect listeners through meaningful conversations, just like a music therapy conference you can listen to anywhere. My name is Trisha Coyote. I'm your weekly host and a board-certified music therapist from the New England region. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe so you never miss an episode and consider leaving us a rating and review. We really appreciate them. You can find more podcast episodes, links to our pod courses, the self-care community, links to all of our social media, and get on our monthly newsletter, all at musictherapychronicles.com. Thank you so much for choosing to listen to this show today, and you can always reach me by sending an email to hello@musictherapychronicles.com. Welcome back to the Music Therapy Chronicles. Thank you so much for being here today, spending your time with me and this podcast. I know there are so many awesome podcasts and other types of media you could be spending your time with, so I really appreciate you being over here on the Music Therapy Chronicles. Today is part 1 of my conversation with Melanie, where we are diving into her research on reflective practice, what that is, what it entails, how we engage with it. And today's episode is going to be more about the drawbacks to reflective practice, the potential negative implications of being reflective in our practice. And then next week, in part 2, we're going to talk about more of the positive things she saw in her research and all the wonderful things that can come out of being reflective and practicing reflective practice. So if this is a term you're not familiar with, or maybe you think you are, but you're not entirely sure, we're obviously going to dive into that today. I hope you enjoy this episode. If you are enjoying the show, please subscribe so you never miss an episode. Don't forget to check us out online and on social media. Hop on our newsletter so you are aware of any upcoming episodes or sales on pod courses or the opening of the self-care community or anything else that's going on. So please enjoy this episode with Melanie. All right, Mel, welcome to the Music Therapy Chronicles.
Thank you.
Excited to have you and to dig into your research. But to get us started, can you tell the listeners about yourself? And it doesn't have to be related to music therapy.
Yeah, I'm Melanie, or Mel, whichever, and I am from Indiana, Southern Indiana. We are the south of the north, I think. And I did my bachelor's at University of Evansville in Evansville, Indiana. And if Indiana is a boot, it's not really, but go with me. If it's a boot, and Evansville is in the toe, and I'm from the heel. So we're at the bottom of the boot from the Louisville, Kentucky area. And I did my master's at Augsburg University in Minneapolis. and I did their hybrid program. So I was able to complete the program while I worked. It took me a very long time to do my bachelor's, 10 years to get a bachelor's. And that's
Wow.
another story. That's a different episode. Another story for another day. And it took me 7 years to do my master's. So it felt like forever. But I'm
Yeah.
really happy with just where I am as a clinician, loving music therapy, loving my stage in life right now. I have 2 little girls. They are 3 and 1. And they are the light of my life, and an amazing husband that I love dearly and supports me. We recently made the move from Southern Indiana to Mississippi, South Mississippi. So it was a little bit of a hike, about 9 hours away from our families and everything, so that I could pursue academia. And so I'm the director of the music therapy program at William Carey University in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And I love it. It's my first year in this role. And I love the university. I love the students. I love the subject matter naturally. And it's awesome. It's what I've wanted to do for a very long time. And I didn't really think that the opportunity would present itself for another 15 years or so, but here we are. So,
Wow.
yeah.
Good for you.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you shared that part about like taking your time, the time you needed to complete your degrees, because
Yeah.
so many people need to hear that. This show
Mm-hmm.
has a lot of like current music therapy students, also professionals, but also people who are interested in getting into the field and are like, it's intimidating. So to know
Yeah.
like, hey, you can take your time, do it at your own pace, like you'll get there. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, thank you for that.
Absolutely. You can get there. And there were days when I thought I wouldn't, and, and I did. So and I was also like, I have some trauma in my history. So I took time to take care of myself as well. And it was not an easy road by any means. But that I've found that seeking that help for myself makes me exponentially better as a therapist and human and teacher and everything
Yeah.
in general. So please take care of yourselves. Anyone listening, please, if whether you're professional or student or intern or whatever phase, take care of yourselves. That's my
Yeah.
soapbox.
Yeah. I love even just like seeing the narrative shift from when I was in undergrad until now about like, that necessity. And hey, if you don't take
Mm-hmm.
care of yourself, like, you are what you have and you need to do that. And like
Yeah.
supporting other people and prioritizing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was not always that way. Let's say that at the beginning, I was not. And it took a whole lot of life experience to kind of knock me on my butt and build me back up. So
Yeah. Well, we're glad you're here. I am really glad that you are getting to do what you wanted to do sooner than you thought. And
yes.
you have so much energy. And I can only imagine what it's like for your students to have you like leading them and teaching them and like having this passion that's exuding from you.
I think
That
I'm
must
a
be really great for
lot
them.
for some of them.
Good. They need to know what they're getting into.
My sophomores in our 8 a.m. class are like, oh my gosh.
But that's what you want. Like I wouldn't want to show up. I had classes, 8 a.m. where the teachers were like, blah, 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 let's just get through this. And I was like, no, like
Right.
I'm here to learn. I'm here to
Yeah.
learn. I might be asleep, but I want to learn.
Yeah.
So they're lucky to have you doing that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm lucky to have them.
So let's get into the meat of what you wanted to talk about today, because you have
Yeah.
recently done a research study,
Yes.
about reflective practice. And so I'm just ready to hear all the things, whatever you want to start with. Go ahead.
I'm ready to say all the things. I love this topic. I love this topic so much because it has been so pivotal in my own development as a therapist. And I just want to like shout it from the rooftops. It is reflective practice isn't, it's not the cure all for everything. I feel like sometimes we stumble upon something and we're like, here it is. Well, here it is for me, and I'm just going to I just want to offer like what I have experienced and what I've learned to help other people that might be in the same place that I was. So I had finished my kind of journey with reflective practice was when I was in my last year, my 10th year, my 10th year in undergrad. College was the best decade of my life. And, I was in my 9th year. So my 10th year was my internship. So technically 10 years, including the internship. So it was my 9th year. And it's a very long story, but I had switched schools and come back to UE, University of Evansville, UE, for my final year, and was finishing up courses. We found out that coming back to the university helped me finish sooner than I would another way. It was very weird. Anyway, so I came back, and at that time, we had a new professor that was with us, Dr. Kathy Murphy, who is now at SUNY New Paltz in New York. And but she was there, and she was new to me when I came back to that program. She had just arrived, and we were doing a reflective session report, I think, after our practicum, and we had to submit, reflective session reports afterwards, or reflective journal entries or something of that sort. And I remember I wrote what happened in the session. I'm doing this reflective report and turning it in, right? It's just like any other assignment that I have to do. Client did this, I did this, client did this, I did this, da, 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 da. Goals were this, client met the goals or didn't go, your run of the mill report. And she gave it back to me and had written on it, "I know what happened. I was there."
Ooh, yes.
Oh crap. So I was indignant and self-righteous. And I was offended at this comment, what? And she was like, "Reflect." And I was like, I am. In fact, I was not reflecting. I was reporting. And I learned just such a wonderfully valuable lesson that semester and that year, really under her guidance, that, there's a big difference in reporting and reflecting. And those, I will write a publication soon. I will write all of these thoughts very soon. I just got to get through this school year.
Yeah. Right.
But so they will be much more organized and thought out in publication, in writing. But, differences between reporting and reflecting are very interesting. And, there's a lot of them, but some of them include, reflective writing. Reflection is, there's not a lot of structure. It's ongoing. It doesn't have clear boundaries. It's not reporting on the outcomes and whatever. It's self-reflective. It's not objective. It's subjective. It's beautifully subjective. It's first person. It's exploring biases. It's exploring things that surprised us in the sessions, things that surprised us in ourselves as we reflect back on them. It's being self-aware of our skills and our areas that we need to grow, and where we come from and who we are as we enter the musical space. It's reflecting on the client and their music and their context as their lived experience and all of that stuff, everything. And it's so much more than this happened in the session, and then this happened, and then that's happened. And these were the goals, and these are how we met them. That's all good. That's documentation, and we need to do that. I'm not going to let the record reflect that I'm not knocking that whatsoever, because we are, ethically bound to do that. But reflective practice and reflective writing in particular is, distinctly different from that. So that was my first experience with someone challenging me to go deeper, think harder, think differently, think introspectively about this, about who you are, who the client is, what our music is, together and separately, how we come into the therapy space, what is happening with therapeutic presence and whatnot, in this space, and developing that reflexivity. And that was a taste, of it in my undergrad, that I got to experience really for the first time. And So on we go, and I go through my internship, and it's great. And then I finish my internship, pass my boards, get my first job. Yeah, I'm a music therapist. I actually make a paycheck now.
Right.
It's been 10 years. I've been waiting to make money doing this thing. And I experienced burnout in about the first year and a
Mm-hmm.
half. And I'm a pretty like, I don't know, I'm an energetic person. I put myself into my work fully. I love what I do. I love music therapy. There's nothing else in this world that I will ever want to do. I love it. And totally sold out for it, advocating, just like involved in professional stuff. And I'm experiencing burnout. And I'm like, so of course, what happens? Shame and guilt, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yay, shame and guilt.
Yes.
Because I'm a new professional. I shouldn't be like burnout is for people who have done it for 30 years. Burnout isn't for a new professional. I have energy. I love what I do. Like, why? Like, what is this? What is this about? And I actually started grad school at Augsburg in Minneapolis. And my first, they have weekend intensives since it was a hybrid program. So I would fly up there for weekend intensives. And our first one, very first one, um, our director, our teacher, Annie Heiderscheit, asked us the question in our advanced music therapy theory, I think that's what the class was called. So I was like, theory, oh, here we go. Like I
Mm-hmm.
hated theory, but music therapy theory turns out is totally different than music theory. And I actually really dug the class. It was cool. But she challenged us, what do you believe? What do you believe about music? What do you believe about human beings? What do you believe about therapy and healing? So, what do you believe about these three things separately? And then what do you believe about how they come together in what we do? And it was, I'm not understating this in any way, life changing,
Mm-hmm.
being asked those questions and being asked to reflect deeply upon music and humans and therapy and healing and how all of those interact in the therapy room in what we do. And it was this light bulb moment where I was like, oh my goodness. Like I was working at that point in a setting where I was being told how to practice. Like I was being told to practice within a certain approach. And I want to be careful how I say this because I don't want to like offend anybody. Because all approaches, are valid according to who you are and what you do and what you believe about
Mm-hmm.
these three things, right? So, but I realized by engaging in this reflection that I was I was being asked to practice in a way that was incongruent with who I am and what I believe to be true about
Mm-hmm.
these three things. And I was like, what am I doing? Like what? And I felt a new grounding that I had never felt before in my clinical practice. I felt solid. I felt rooted in like this is who I am. This is what I believe. This is where I come from. And the power of music is such and such. And it's like this and the power, like, and it all made sense. And it was like a band of heavenly angels. And so I quit my job and I was blessed to get a new job. I didn't just like quit it willy nilly. And I realized I'm in a very privileged position that there happened to be at that time a job available to me in a different context
Mm-hmm.
that allowed me to practice authentically. Not everyone has that privilege and that luxury. A lot of people are just lucky to have a job where they are. They've created themselves a job or they're doing whatever they can. So I want to like make that abundantly clear because I realize not everyone, I'm not just like, yeah, quit your jobs because you need to practice authentically. Well, that's not realistic for everyone in everyone's situation. So 100% understand that. But for me, it changed everything. And I've never been burned out since. And that was 2015. And so the road to reflective practice, I swear there's a point here. My research is relevant to this. But the context is important for where I come from with reflective practice, and just recognizing its value in professional development and maintaining therapeutic presence and authenticity in our practice, and engaging in reflexivity, practicing ethically, which has implications for my research as well. So that's kind of how I arrived at the importance of this. And it only got better, throughout my graduate studies. I just really engaged in diving deep into what we do in this great field and all that is there in this clinical work that we do, because I will study it for the rest of my life and I will never even come close to knowing, everything that is there, because it's so rich and it's so deep. And I love it. I can't get enough of it. So as I was starting on this journey of studying reflective practice, I was like, why isn't there anything in our field written on this? Yes. Like, what the heck, bro? I shouldn't say anything. It's not, there are some things. Dr. Ken Bruscia has a great book on reflexivity. I'm trying to remember the exact name of it, and I have it here in my notes somewhere. I can't find it. Forms of reflexivity in music therapy, an anthology, where he advocates for self-inquiry, authenticity, self-experiences in practice, research, and education. That is really a seminal text, but it's an anthology, so it's just a collection of his writings. And he talks about reflexivity. I'm talking about reflective practice and reflexivity. They're very similar, concepts. And that's one of the challenges in our field, is everybody's got a different name for everything. So our terminology is confusing, because I've even had people say, like, when I've presented on reflective practice at conferences, people are like, what is reflective practice? And I'm like, essentially, there's a very wordy definition that I like to use, but there's a ton of different definitions. But it's like the act of reflecting on anything to do with clinical work, like your clients, yourself, your music, your everything, who you are in context, your culture, your origin, client's origin, music, all of it. Excuse me. So getting into that, just that definition in itself is tricky. And there's not much in our field, but what we do have are just a few studies on, like, some people use therapeutic presence as the term. So there's like books on like cultural competence and shifting perspectives and therapeutic presence and being with. That concept of being with is a very reflective type of way of going about practice. So we have some differences in terminology, but my concept of reflective practice is very much aligned with Bruscia's definition of reflexivity, that he actually defines reflexivity in Defining Music Therapy, the text from 2014. He says to continually bring into awareness, evaluate, and when necessary, modify one's work with a client. And of course, he expounds upon that greatly. But that's like the small definition, the brief definition that he gives. The definition, I'm looking at my notes, sorry. The definition that I used in my research, my operational definition of reflective practice, was the purposeful examination of thoughts, emotions, actions, beliefs, values, assumptions, therapeutic issues, and events that are relevant to music therapy clinical practice. So all of that. And through this process of inquiry, exploration, and critical analysis, new knowledge is synthesized that fosters development as a clinician by creating new understandings and meanings for practical application. Reflective practice can take place before, during, or after sessions. And reflecting in the moment with clients allows the clinician to respond to the client's emerging and changing needs. So there's reflection outside of the therapy setting and like within the therapy setting where you are present with the client and also reflecting of what's happening in the moment while you're doing it. So it's this like extra like layer of clinical presence, that is there. And from my own experience, but also from the readings that I've done, that's a high level, work, high level of work that we do when we can access that otherness in the therapy setting while in the moment. That's really cool stuff. Really cool layers. So all of that brought me to looking at, like, there's not much in the literature. There's a ton in the nursing literature. I found a ton of stuff. So I was able to pull some stuff, from other fields. There's a lot in the just clinical counseling and like clinical psychology literature. There's some in the social work literature as well, and some in education, reflective practices in education, educators, literature. So I was pulling stuff from different disciplines that's applicable to us, and so much of it. There were sometimes when I'm reading a nursing text, I forget that I'm reading a nursing text because everything applies so much to what we do. It just needs the music piece in there, and so there needs to be a text coming to you soon in all my free time.
Right? Yeah.
Which is hilarious. So that got me thinking, what's in our professional documents? Like, is this just like a good idea? Or is this something that we need to be doing, like that every person needs to be doing? And what is our ethical responsibility? What does it say in our scope of practice, our professional, our standards of clinical practice, the CBMT domains, our ethics, like what's out there? So I decided to look at all of those things. And it turns out I'm just going to say it, it's my opinion, but my bias is that every single music therapist needs to be engaging in reflective practice. So that's kind of where I started. I was like, what is our professional responsibility here to ourselves, to our profession, to our clients? And I studied these things. I found that for the AMTA Standards of Clinical Practice, there were 10 articles that either require reflective practice to meet them, or they speak directly about engaging in one or more types of reflection. So that was cool and encouraging. I was like, okay, these are our this is the standard, right? This is what we need to be doing. And then I decided to look at the Code of Ethics, and 4 out of 5 of the principles on the aspirational code, updated in 2019, 4 out of the 5 principles make references to reflective practice.
Wow.
So that's telling. And then I looked at the CBMT board certification domains released in 2020. 67 items from the 5 practice domains are relevant to reflective practice. 67. I didn't expect that many, to be honest. I was like, oh, that one too. Yeah. And then the CBMT and AMTA scope of music therapy practice that they released in 2015 together, the two organizations. They talk about client-centered care, talk about responsive, like the therapist being responsive to needs, values, and preferences of the client and family. They talk about music therapists must be competent and know their limitations, recognize when to seek assistance or refer the client to another professional. These types of things they require self-awareness, self-inquiry, self-exploration of what the client needs, what you are capable of, and when you need help and why and how and all of that stuff. So that's like, I'm like studying all these things and I'm like, gosh, there's such a rationale here for this practice. It is like so relevant to every music therapist. And then I looked at what are other countries doing? What's, and it turns out a lot of other countries that music therapists are required to engage in either like supervision, which is supervision. I would call a type of reflective practice would be supervision, a very good type. Supervision is good. Go do it. Even case consultation. So that's not an ongoing thing, but like a one-off when you need it, grab a peer and talk about a case or whatever. A peer or a like, I guess, colleague, someone higher than you, even like with more expertise or education or whatever your supports need at that time. And we're not there well, in the US. So it's just like, at this point, there's nothing that says, like, we have all these documents that say like that we should be doing it, but there's no accountability. I shouldn't say that they say we should be doing it. They are tasks that are like music that reflective practice can meet or should meet. I don't know. I'm trying not to just put shoulds on it because I don't like should, like,
yeah,
but like we should.
yeah, no, I get that.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to be like non-judgmental about it and trying to reserve that, but it's hard when I like feel so strongly about like the benefits of it. And the need for it for ethical practice and, just like best practice in general. So other countries are requiring this. We are not requiring it as in the form of like having accountability. We don't have to submit anything that says like, we don't have to seek supervision. We don't have to. And you're on one of your other episodes that I was listening to, the peer support group one, they talked about the accessibility of supervision. Like it's expensive, it can be, not always, it can be expensive. So that led me to my research questions. What are the barriers? Like, why are we doing this? I don't know. Like, we don't know what we're doing. Like, and because I wanted to like, I went so many different directions with where I wanted to go with my research because I have so many questions. And I hope that this study is the first of many, many, many studies that we can really just bulk up our literature and fill in this gap that we have. But I feel like I kept going back to like all these ideas of like what I wanted to do, but I just kept going back to like, but what are we doing? We don't even know what music therapists in the US are doing. Maybe we're all using it and it's awesome and we're just not writing about it or talking about it too much. Maybe no one is. I don't know. And we don't know unless we ask. So it led me to a survey. And this is the first step in just saying, what are the reflective practices of music therapists? And then what are the perceived benefits that music therapists are seeing? Are there benefits? I don't know. I think there are benefits, but do everybody else? I don't know. What are the perceived benefits? And then I added drawbacks. I didn't personally see any drawbacks, but who am I to say what someone else is going to experience? So I felt like I needed to kind of add that question in there. What are the drawbacks? What are the barriers to engaging in reflective practice? And these questions kind of formatted or formulated my research questions and where I came from in asking the survey questions. And we got lots of data and results from that. So, but I feel like I've been talking for a really long time. So you go.
Oh, it's all, but so much good stuff in there. I didn't want to wreck your train of thought. And I personally, I don't like listening to podcasts where people talk over each other. So I prefer to take the listening role. Anyway, And now I've lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. Counter implications. You touched on this because I read the abstract of
Mhm.
your study. And my first thought was, well, yeah, because as someone who also has a lot of questions in life and just likes asking questions and learning things, and that's why I have a podcast. Sometimes people can get so, or I can get so in my head about it. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, I could have done this better and this could have changed. And this is something I need to improve. And this is an area where it's a weakness of mine. And like, you can bring yourself down so far if you don't have like support in your reflection or
Mm,
someone to show you your areas of strength, or even like the personal, the self-confidence to know like, yes, those are all things I need to take care of. They don't need to be all taken care of in this very moment right now. Like, I need to learn them in my own time and like take accountability for them. But um making myself go crazy is not like, that's not accountability, right? Then
it's
I'm
not
in
helpful.
freeze mode, right? Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's my thought, is
Yes.
it's super important, it needs to be done, but also like, don't let it stop you and like stop you in your tracks.
Yeah. And that exact like response was the overwhelming response that I got in my results. And I was so glad I asked the question because I would not have known. I would not have known if I did not ask the question. And I'm so glad I did. I almost didn't. And I was like, no, it would be like really biased of me to ask about the benefits and not ask like if there are drawbacks, because maybe people see them. And that was it. I mean, I gathered 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 like overarching themes for that question. I asked that question in particular in an open-ended format, just so people would have freedom to respond however they wanted. It was no multiple choice, no anything. And I did a qualitative review or qualitative analysis, I should say, of this, just like recognizing the themes and sub themes. And the most prevalent theme, number one theme, was negative thoughts about the self. And the sub themes in that were rumination on perceived mistakes and overthinking, imposter phenomenon, second guessing clinical decisions, being overly critical of self, feelings of overwhelm or inadequacy, lack of knowledge of how to improve one's own skills and help the client, and potential for burnout if feelings of ineffectiveness prevail. And that was, gosh, I was just like, had this moment of like humility and thinking about our, like, what all we experienced, because it was so over, like that response, like all of those things came up. I mean, survey after survey after survey, as I was combing through these responses, and I was like, gosh, look at us. Like, we are so hard on
Oh,
ourselves.
well said.
Like, man, we're hard on ourselves. We're good at what we do. We're good at what we do. And we have so much compassion for the people that are across the room from us, or the table, or in the chair in front of us, or at the piano with us, or whatever it is. And I just want us to have that much compassion and that much non-judgmentalness and that much, gentleness with ourselves. I want that so badly for us, because I've been in that exact space too. And I know what that feels like. It's awful. um, I once had, like, during my internship, I had one of my supervisors. I was in a hospital, and we left the room. I did my session. I was being observed. We left the room, and she said, "How did that go?" And I immediately went into all of the things that I did wrong, or all my perceived things. I could have done that better, and like that wasn't very good. I missed that chord, or I missed like whatever. I really felt like I should have taken the conversation in like this direction. And she was like, "Whoa, stop."
Yeah.
And she was like, "Okay, 3 things you did right now, go." And I was like, like I had difficulty. I don't want to say I couldn't think of any, but it took me a minute to recalibrate and like try to pull out and recognize the things that I did well. And I'm like, gosh, why? Why
Yeah.
is it like
That's
that?
probably so common. I can think of like
It
many
is.
internship supervisors who probably have conversations like that, especially at the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning of an internship.
Yeah.
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 And I'm
And
thinking, oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
As I get more experience as a clinician, I feel like I am able to recognize, like, oh, this didn't work. But I can also say to myself, I made the decision in that moment with intentionality. And it, something else might have worked better. And so next time I will try that other thing. Where, like,
Mm-hmm.
as a very new clinician, as an intern, I wasn't able to do that. It was just like, oh, I made a decision. It was the wrong one.
Uh-huh.
Now it's like every decision has some thought behind it, has some intentionality. And then we're like, okay, we'll see where it goes. And then from there, we'll decide if that's the same decision we should make next time, or
Mm-hmm.
something else should be tried,
Yeah.
explored.
Yeah. And then the next like drawback, I guess we're kind of getting into drawbacks, but that's okay. Like that's where our conversation is taking us, and I like it. There was the surfacing of challenging content.
Mm.
Like people were like kind of afraid to bring up for themselves, difficulty moving through like an impactful realization in a session or outside of a session. Like if something comes up for you that's really intense, what do I do with that? Because I got things to do and people to see. So we're just going to shut it down, like
Yes.
I don't have time for
Very
this right now.
capitalistic, push
Right.
forward, never make actual improvements, just gains.
Suck it up, buttercup.
Yes.
Exactly. Oh, I have so many thoughts on that. um, yeah, and like, can I deal with this right now? I don't have time to deal with this right now, or this is becoming emotionally distressing for me. So, like for ease or for scheduling or for whatever reason, like I need to shut it down, and I'm not going to go there because that is a can of worms that cannot be open right now because I have such and such that needs my attention right now. I have
Mm.
paperwork and I have clients and I have kids at home and we got soccer practice and we've got, my partner needs whatever from me and we're buying a house or life, like
Yeah.
all of the things. And we are dealing with so much, in and out of our jobs. And so while I will scream from the rooftops all day about the benefits of reflective practice and like how like, gosh, we really need to be doing this. I also like really get it why you don't have time, energy, emotional energy, I guess, to engage in this work because it is hard work. One of the comments, the responses the person put it in all caps. This is hard work.
Mm.
And it is. And if you have a nice cushy job, where you have lots of extra free time, then it's great. Awesome. You can engage in reflective practice every day. That's great. If you are like many of us and you are worn out at the end of the day and you can't possibly think about going into deep thinking and reflection, like I get that too. One of the barriers, the like far and away the most prevalent barrier that people said was time.
Mm.
I do not have time. And I get it. I really, really, I really do, especially in this new role right now.
Yeah.
I get it. I don't have time. Uh, there's so many thoughts even on that too. And it's easy to say like, oh, well, you just need to lighten your caseload. Oh, you just need to tell your supervisor. You just need to fill in the blank.
Yes.
Just anytime you say
Yes.
just in front of it, right? It's
Yeah.
like the wrong thing to say.
Oh.
just just do this. Like, have you tried?
Yeah.
And there is no quick fix to that, that barrier of time. Sometimes it looks like advocating for yourself that you need to do one less group a day at the hospital, or see, spend less percentage of your time in direct patient care and more percentage of your time doing reflective work or whatever. I mean, sometimes it's advocating that with our supervisors. Sometimes it's just like carving it out. If we're a private practice, maybe I shouldn't have 30 clients. Maybe 27 is okay. maybe 20 is okay. But then you got to put food on the table, if you're in private practice. So it's like, solve one problem, create another. And
Yes.
it is spaghetti and not waffles. And I totally 100% get that. So I don't want people listening to be like, easy for you to say,
Yeah.
You don't know my life, or my
It's
job
a
or my
systematic
boss.
problem.
It
It's
is.
something we can sit here and discuss on solutions, but until the system is fixed, the
Yeah.
problem is not fixed. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. It is systemic. It is not individualized by any means. And that was very clear in this survey, because so many people said the same thing. Like, this is a whole culture thing.
Yes.
It really, really is. So, well, I thought this was going to be much more uplifting. It's really down and gloomy right now.
No, we're good. Hard shift. Spaghetti and waffles. I have never heard that analogy. Can you explain that to me?
Everything is interconnected. And I know the listeners can't see me right now, but I'm doing my hands in a very interconnected weave.
Yeah. So spaghetti is like the mesh of interconnected, and waffles is like the grid.
And waffles is very compartmentalized. The syrup goes in the boxes, or syrup if you're weird and say it weird. My husband says syrup, and it is a household debate.
Oh gosh.
It's syrup, son. Anyway, waffles, very compartmentalized, kind of thinking like, this problem is this, and like, this problem is this, and this problem is this. And that's not true at all. Everything is related and interconnected. Spaghetti.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank you for explaining that to me.
Yeah. I was just using that analogy with the methods. I was teaching the 4 methods to my sophomores this week. And they were talking about, like, can one lead into another? And I was like, absolutely. Yeah. You can have songwriting in the context of or you could improv in the context of songwriting, and everything. I was like, spaghetti, not waffles.
Yeah. 100%. I'm going to use that now. Spaghetti, not waffles. This podcast is sponsored by the Music Therapy Podcast Collective, also known as MTPC, where you can find a variety of CMTE opportunities in the form of pod courses. All of MTPC's pod courses are built on a listen, learn, apply model, where you start by listening to some assigned podcast episodes, then move into learning with the assistance of a workbook filled with resources for you to start your self-study towards whatever topics are most interesting, inspiring, and applicable to your practice. And then we finish with the apply section, which includes an office hour and a worksheet to determine how you are going to apply your learning to your personal life or professional practice. You can find all the Music Therapy Chronicles pod courses on our website, musictherapychronicles.com, and you can find the entire catalog of pod courses at MTPC's website, mtpodcastcollective.com. Make sure you also get on the MTPC newsletter for 10% off your first pod course purchase. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. I really hope you enjoyed it and got a lot out of it. Throughout this conversation, the idea that I feel like I've been harping on lately, but I guess it's just top of mind for me, that our profession creates workaholics, and reflective practice is kind of like an example of that, I think, with like a different a different lens, I guess, where like we're always trying to improve, we're always trying to do better, we're always trying to do more, get more done, learn more, help our clients in new ways. Like there's just so much that goes into being a music therapist, and that can be incredibly overwhelming and disheartening, but it also is part of the beauty of our profession. And so next week in part 2 with Melanie, we're going to dive in more to what that beauty looks like through the perspective of reflective practice. So stay tuned for that. Again, subscribe so you don't miss that episode or any future episodes that are in the works. Thank you again for tuning in today. I really appreciate it. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation and got a lot out of it. If you're looking for more Music Therapy Chronicles, you can check out our website, musictherapychronicles.com, for more episodes, blog posts, social media links, contact information, our self-care community, and our CMTE opportunities in the form of pod courses. Hop on our monthly newsletter if you haven't already, and follow us on social media for just staying up to date on what's going on behind the scenes. We are Music Therapy Chronicles on all of the platforms. Please take a moment to leave us a rating and review. They really help the podcast be more visible so more people like you who are looking for this type of content can find it. Thank you again for taking the time to listen to this week's episode, and I'll see you in the next one.